Representative Ajello.
Here.
Representative Batista.
Present.
Representative Bennett.
Present.
Representative Caldwell.
Present.
Representative Casimiro.
Present.
Representative Corbasi. Representative Felix.
Present.
Representative Lombardi. Representative Norrie.
Here.
Representative Place.
Present.
Representative Roberts.
Present.
And Representative Bella Wilkinson.
Here.
Eleven present, 4 absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Welcome to the Committee on Judiciary. It's Wednesday, March 17th, 2021. Probably noticed that it's St. Patrick's Day because I have this mask on. Probably wear this one day a year and makes sense. Yeah, I guess, yeah. So we have one bill here for a vote. We call it consideration. And we have 13 bills here for scheduled for hearing and/or consideration. So I will deal with the first bill, which is a bill that's here for consideration, and I will introduce it as Bill 5470. It's sponsored by Chairwoman Serpa. It's an act related to criminal procedure, and it creates and authorizes any person who's been sentenced to imprisonment greater than 1 year subsequent to being wrongfully convicted of a criminal offense to petition the court for an award of compensation damages, including attorney's fees. And it's my understanding that from our original bill, there is a sub-A. So I will ask the legal counsel to tell us what the sub-A is, and then I'll ask for a motion, if there are no questions, to hold the original bill indefinitely and vote on the sub-A. John.
Thank you, Chairman. The sub-A deals with page 3, lines 4 and 5, and essentially the original bill proposed indicated that access and eligibility for services provided by the state to any offenders adjudicated by the court and residing in the community would be done through the Department of Corrections. You may recall that at the hearings there was concern about probation, parole, or Department of Corrections being involved in this particular statute. So the wording was changed to access to and coordination of eligible services shall be facilitated through the Department of Human Services. So that's the only change. Department of Human Services from the prior language.
Okay. Are there any questions of legal counsel? Yes, Edie.
No questions. I'd like to move passage of the sub-A and indefinite postponement of the original bill, if that's appropriate.
A motion has been made and second. If there's no discussion, don't see any from the members on the Hollywood Squares tote board over here. All those in favor signify by saying, oh, I do? Oh, we have to do a roll call. I'm sorry. Roll call, please.
Chairman Craven.
Aye.
First Vice Chair McEntee. Second Vice Chair Knight. Representative Ajello.
Aye.
Representative Batista.
Aye.
Representative Bennett.
Aye.
Representative Caldwell.
Aye.
Representative Casimiro.
Aye.
Representative Corbasi. Representative Felix.
Aye.
Representative Lombardi. Representative Norrie.
Aye.
Representative Place.
Aye.
Representative Roberts.
Aye.
And Representative Bella Wilkinson.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Unanimous, I believe. Congratulations to both Chairwoman Serpa and Scott Hornoff, who was the inspiration for this bill. Okay, the next bill I'd like to deal with is House Bill 5859, sponsored by Representative Ajello. It's an act related to public records and access to records, and it provides that any... Oh, that's right. Very good. Thanks. Appreciate that. Do I have a motion? Do I hear a motion to hold all bills for study? Second. So moved and seconded. Do I need to take a roll call? Okay.
Chairman Craven.
Aye.
First Vice Chair McEntee. Second Vice Chair Knight. Representative Ajello.
Aye.
Representative Batista.
Aye.
Representative Bennett.
Aye.
Representative Caldwell.
Aye.
Representative Casimiro.
Aye.
Representative Corbasi. Representative Felix.
Aye.
Representative Lombardi. Representative Noré.
Aye.
Representative Place.
Nay.
Representative Roberts.
Aye.
And Representative Bella Wilkinson.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll get to House Bill 5859, sponsored by Representative Ajello. It's an act relating to public records, and it provides that any reports of an investigation conducted by Internal Affairs Unit or the equivalent are public records. I'm going to presume, Edie, that Internal Affairs is the police department. Okay.
You are correct, Chairman Craven. That is the intent of this legislation.
Okay.
Page 3, lines 15 to 19 are the business portion of this legislation. And it would make the results of internal investigations public, absent any personally identifying information about, I assume, those people who served as witnesses for this investigation.
Hey, how are you?
When we think about law enforcement officers, they're public employees, they're empowered to carry guns, pepper spray, and billy clubs, or whatever they're called lately. They're empowered to drive automobiles at speeds far above the speed limit on our roads in our cities and towns and on our highways. And yet these internal investigations are at public expense, and they're presumably carried on in the public interest. And yet, when the public seeks information, we are told, trust us, I guess. I can't imagine that if we were establishing something like a police department or a law enforcement entity today, we would set it up giving people the powers, the authority that they have over our lives and over our safety, the threat that they can pose to some people, but really the power of carrying guns and pepper spray, and to not have an oversight and an internal investigation of perhaps wrongdoing, or if not wrongdoing, maybe inappropriate actions, not have something that the public could see and follow and know that that our wishes are being followed. So this legislation is aimed at making the results of internal investigations public and keeping private that information about individuals that really should be kept private. I'm happy to answer questions. This legislation came to me drafted by the ACLU.
Chairwoman Casimiro.
Representative Ajello, I assume the information will be made public after the investigation is completed?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions of the members here present? And are any of the members on video? Are there any questions of the members? And are there any questions from those that are on video here? I don't see any hands. Okay, no questions by the committee. We have two witnesses. The first is Stephen Brown from the ACLU. Steve Brown, you're on the air.
Hello, Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, members of the committee. On behalf of the ACLU, I want to express our strong support for this legislation. As Representative Ajello indicated, this is something that we asked her to introduce. It's designed to close a loophole in the Access to Public Records Act, and we think closing it is essential because the public is being denied access to even redacted findings of misconduct, and that really undermines transparency and accountability in police matters. The history of this is that there are actually two Rhode Island Supreme Court decisions that have been issued over the years that have interpreted the Access to Public Records Act to hold that the final investigations of police misconduct by police departments are public records with personally identifiable information redacted. However, in 2017, the Attorney General's office issued an advisory opinion that made a distinction between complaints that were filed by residents or citizens and complaints that were initiated by the police department itself. And the opinion said if they were internally initiated, then there's no obligation for the police department to make those records public. We don't think that distinction makes any sense. There are certainly many internal investigations that could be investigations of very serious allegations of misconduct. And all this bill is designed to do is to say that that's not what the Supreme Court said in its two decisions. It's not what the Access to Public Records Act says now, but let's put in language that makes it absolutely clear that regardless of who initiated a complaint of misconduct, once it's final, once the investigation has been completed, the public should have a right to find out what the ultimate results are. So we hope that the committee will give this favorable consideration. We think it is a matter of just basic transparency and accountability, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of Steve Brown from the ACLU? Seeing none. Next witness is Randall Rose. Randall, you're on the air.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Yes, I'm in support of this bill, and it's basically I think it's important to have a police force to protect child safety, but also it is important to make sure that the public has a chance to make sure that police officers really are working for us. The disciplinary system for police officers is way too opaque. It's a national scandal that is also a concern in Rhode Island. There's internal discipline of police officers has very little accountability to the public because a lot of the investigative reports are not being released. Well, in general, they are not released. So this bill is simply going to allow the public to have more visibility about what's happening and make sure that what the investigatory process for complaints and disciplinary actions against police is being done in a way that a majority of the public can live with. I think that the bill should actually be a little bit stronger. As it's written, it's possible to evade the bill by saying that whatever document is produced is not called a report, or whatever process has gone through is not called an investigation. I think it should be stronger and simply allow all documents that produced in the process of responding to and following up on complaints or internal discipline. It should be available. If there's nothing called an investigative report, then the other documents should be available. So just to make sure that this is not evaded by saying it's not called an investigation or not called a report. I want to encourage law enforcement agencies to produce an actual investigation report. So if the agencies do not say that they're not doing an investigation or don't have an investigation report, then all relevant documents will be released. But I think the law enforcement agencies will deal with that by simply producing a proper investigative report, which is what they should do in the first place. So that would make the bill stronger. I understand the issue is controversial, and sometimes people want to keep the things out of sight because it's controversial. That's becoming less and less sustainable. The controversy has been growing. It's not going away. And the right way to solve it is simply to make these disciplinary reports available to the public with redactions of names and personal information if necessary, but make them available to the public so that over time that public visibility will lead to a disciplinary process which is more acceptable to the public than what we're having right now. Because right now, the lack of public information does not increase confidence. It's one of the factors contributing to a lack of confidence. And sometimes you just have to rip off the bandage and let the documents be seen in public and go through the process of responding to public concerns, so that these complaints are dealt with in a way that's more satisfactory to the general public. Because right now, the process tends to be too lenient in certain cases, and the public's concerned about that, and making more visibility would lead over time to catalyzing a change in the direction of what the majority would like. So for those reasons, I support the bill. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Rose? Seeing none, that completes testimony on House Bill 5859, which brings us to Senior Deputy Majority Leader Fallela's bill, 5735, an act related to criminal offenses, public utilities. It requires any person recording an oral communication, whether in person, telephonically, or otherwise, to inform the other party or parties that the communications are being recorded. Yes. Oh, yeah. While we're waiting for Representative Fallela to set up, Roberta, could you record the votes in the presence of the first vice chair?
Absolutely.
Thank
And my votes are in the affirmative, Roberta, and as to House Bill 5470, which we know as the Scott Hornoff bill, very much support. I very much support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Happy St. Patty's Day to all.
Thank you.
I'm here to testify on 5735. This was brought to me during the summer months, walking the district and speaking to constituents. One of my constituents brought this up to me, and this would be a person having a conversation must have been given notice first, or consent that he is being recorded, he or she is being recorded. And I just think there's so much technology today, so many ways of people recording other folks. It's just maybe a protection for someone, whether it be a domestic or a political, whatever it could be, just a protection in place. Most of the New England states do have this in place. Currently, there are only 12 states, though, that have this law in effect. Other than that, I don't know if I know Steve Brown from the ACLU did send in a letter of opposition. But other than that, that's really all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions for the sponsor?
Yes,
Oh,
I have one.
where am I? Oh, Dave, is it you?
Mine's more of a comment than a question, but I know
Okay.
someone in,
And then Dave Bennett. So let's take Dave Bennett first. He's older.
I just was wondering, Representative Fallela, what about the case of domestic violence or harassment, terrorism, when somebody is calling your home, making threats to you, that should be allowed. You don't want to tell somebody that's threatening you that you're recording them, because that could lead to more problems, I would think. And I was just wondering how you felt about that.
I could see your point on that, but yet again, then maybe that threat wouldn't be brought to that person. Maybe they would think twice about threatening them in that manner. But it's something to think about.
Thank you.
Representative Place.
Well, like I said, I didn't have necessarily a question, but my only concern would be, I know friends of mine have used this law successfully to overcome employment discrimination. A lot of times, currently, the way the law is written in Rhode Island, if your employer's sitting there being very matter-of-fact with you, they pretty much spill the beans and admit that they're discriminating against you in some way, shape, or form. And if we pass this legislation, I think that that puts that ability in jeopardy.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Representative Vella-Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not a question, but Rep. Villella, this goes along with what Chairman Bennett had said. I'm aware of several women who were in the military who were in a situation where they were being egregiously sexually harassed, and they were able to record the person with the comments that he had made. And if they had said, well, excuse me, sir, do you mind if I tape this conversation as you harass me? What do you think is going to happen?
That's true.
You know, so for that reason, I would have a hard time with this,
I see.
supporting this bill. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
I'm sorry, hang on, Representative Vella. Yes, Jose Batista from the great state of Washington Park.
The great community of Washington Park in South Providence.
I live there, it's a state.
Good afternoon, Rep. I just had a quick question. You mentioned that the New England states, mostly on the other side of this issue, do you have any sense as to what the national landscape looks like on this? Where do the majority of states have the one-party rule, which is your amendment, versus the, one-party rule is what we have right now.
Right.
Two parties, I think, but what the amendment does.
Right.
Do you know what the national landscape looks like?
Well, there's 12 states that have the two-party rule. Massachusetts has the two-party rule, but they have special provisions. But most of the states do have the other one.
So most states are like Rhode Island in
Yes,
this case?
yes, correct.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments or questions by the members? All right, seeing none, then that would conclude testimony on House Bill 5735. Thank you very much. Which brings us to Chairman Solomon's Bill 5737. It's an act related to fish and wildlife violations. It enhances the penalties for the violation of any law, rule, or regulation relating to wild animals.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, while we're waiting for Chairman Solomon to be hooked up, would you like your votes recorded and your presence noted?
Let me apologize to you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the committee. I'm a little late. I was sowing the seeds of discontent. I would like to have my vote in the affirmative on 5470, Representative Serpa's bill. I strongly support that, and I believe you held the other bills for further study.
I did.
And I would like to vote aye on that. And thank you for your indulgence.
And thank you for your seeding of discontent. That's how democracy grows.
How'd you make out?
I was pretty successful.
Uh-oh. All right, we're done with the levity, and so we'll go to Chairman Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As you had stated, this bill would enhance the penalty for violation of any law, rule, or regulation relating to wild animals from $500 to $1,000. It would require an individual convicted of multiple violations on a single occurrence to have their name and photo posted on social media or internet-based platforms. I introduced this bill after reading a press release from the Department of Environmental Management. Specifically reading from the Post, last October, the environmental police officers from DEM's Division of Law Enforcement received complaints of illegal deer hunting activity on privately owned property in the town of Charleston. On the opening day of muzzleloader deer season in November, an EPO working the area received an additional report of illegal hunting on this same property. While investigating, the officer observed a poacher dressed in full camouflage take off running despite commands to stop. The EPO apprehended the poacher and determined that he had illegally killed an 8-point buck. The poacher was arrested and charged with deer hunting without landowner permission, deer hunting within 500 feet of an occupied dwelling, discharge of a firearm within 500 feet of an occupied dwelling, and obstruction of an officer in the execution of duty. Civil charges were filed for use of urine-based scents, lack of required fluorescent orange clothing, and failure to obey a DEM official. The poacher's muzzleloader, tree stand, and equipment were seized, and he paid $700 in fines. $700 in fines is why I introduced this bill. And it's not by any fault of the Department of Environmental Management. It's because the law on the fines has not changed in many years. I'm looking back to past legislation. The amendments back in 2011 didn't even touch the $500 penalty. So back in 2011, it was $500. And the previous change to that law goes back to 1981. So although I don't have the public laws in front of me from 1981, it leads me to believe that back in 1981, it was still $500 for a violation of that section. So I think it's time that we increase the penalties for this. I have had the opportunity to speak with some hunters, and they agree that it's important to penalize the poachers and bad actors, because that 1% of the population that makes everyone else look bad. And I've also spoken to the Department of Environmental Management, which you received a letter in favor of this legislation, but they had also suggested, although it may not be written, they had suggested increasing the fines for striped bass penalties. For the first offense from $100 to $200, second offense from $200 to $400, and the third and subsequent offenses from $500 to $1,000. And I would be okay with that, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that, we penalize these bad actors, and also, make sure that no one conducts that no one does that again. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions of the sponsor? Yes, Doc.
Chairman Solomon, I think this is a good bill. The last portion of it that says any person convicted of multiple violations, single occurrence, etc., shall have their name and photo posted on social media and internet-based platforms. What is that referring to? And what does that mean?
So the reason why I put that on is we want to discourage bad actors. The reason why I put any person convicted of multiple violations on a single occurrence would apply to the situation that I explained to you that happened last October in Charleston. I was actually surprised to see that individual's name and picture was not posted on the internet. So for someone who committed several offenses, their name and picture would be posted on Facebook or Twitter.
I understand.
But the person who maybe accidentally hunts on someone's property didn't know. I want to avoid the person who makes an honest mistake. I don't think necessarily that they need to be put on social media.
And I think the intention is good as far as the intent to deter this with regard to multiple violations. But when it says posted on social media, internet-based platforms, whose social media or internet-based platform? Are you talking about a particular site? Are you talking about in general? That's what I don't understand.
So it would be the Department of Environmental Management's page. So whether it be either their web page, Facebook, Twitter.
Okay.
I did leave it pretty open because I didn't want to, specify as to one particular platform. So
no, and
I would
that's
give
good.
them
But
the option.
I think if this bill, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, if this bill were to go forward, I think you would have to delineate that it's the DEM's social media and internet platform. Because the way I read it, there's nothing specific there.
Would that be something that you would be in favor of, Chairman?
Absolutely.
Okay. Legal counsel's noted that, and when it comes back for a vote, we'll substitute A it.
Chairman,
Yes.
can I say?
Yeah, first vice chair.
Thank you. Chairman Solomon, I love this bill. I get a lot of complaints about hunting in my district, especially since the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has expanded hunting on some of the Chaffee Preserves and other areas, Treston Pond. So I think it's a good thing to have so we know who's abiding by the laws and who's not. And I thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Yes, Representative Wilkinson.
Thank you. Chairman Solomon?
Yes.
I haven't gone hunting in Rhode Island, so I don't know what the rule of law is, but would the poacher be required to relinquish the buck? Because it seems to me that a 6-point buck would bring more than $1,000 to someone who's interested in purchasing and butchering game.
I believe Chairman Bennett may have answered that on the line because he has more experience on this than I do. But I know in this particular instance, the deer was relinquished. They were not able to keep it. And like you said, you can get a lot more than $500 for a deer, yet the violation is only $500. So what's currently there to deter that conduct?
Nothing. No. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Any further questions of the sponsor?
I have one, Chairman
Okay.
Craven.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Joe, Representative Solomon, this bill, where does the fine money go? Does that go back into DEM to help them with enforcement, or does it go into the general fund? Where does it go?
Chairman Bennett, I don't have that. I actually don't have that information, but that would be interesting, and that's something. If it were to fund something at the Department of Environmental Management, I would support that. Allocating those funds towards it.
Oh, it's a great bill. It's important that we keep. I'm getting an echo. But it's important to keep DEM active and out in the field, and unscrupulous hunters, they can really and fishermen can damage the legal hunters and the legal fishermen. I know they confiscate all your fish if you're caught striper fishing and you've got undersize or tautog, any of the game fish out in the bay. And anytime you shoot an animal, you have to fill out your forms and everything. And most legitimate butchers will not touch that deer unless it's tagged out. What the bad actors do is they drag it down to Arcadia, tag it down there, and say they shot it there. So with the funding going to DEM, they'd be able to patrol a little more than what they do. But I think it's a great bill, Chairman Solomon.
Thank you.
Any further questions? You have someone on the Hannah Stern from the ACLU. Hannah, you're on the air.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for your time this afternoon. My name is Hannah Stern. I'm testifying on behalf of the ACLU of Rhode Island, and we would strongly urge amendment to this piece of legislation. Our organization has consistently opposed bills which could facilitate vigilantism or public shaming beyond the punishment prescribed for an offense, and this bill could do just that by requiring DEM to essentially create an unofficial social media or online database of wildlife offenders. So not only could this inappropriately provoke harassment of the individual, but the potential for ongoing public shaming is really only harmful for the individual who has already fulfilled their punishment and is undergoing their own rehabilitative process. So we would strongly urge deletion of the provision which would create the social media or online photo posting, just to ensure that this legislation does not facilitate such inappropriately punitive effects on an individual. So thank you very much for your time. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions of Hannah Stern? Okay, seeing none, that concludes testimony on Chairman Solomon's Bill 5737, and we will go to, let's see, the next bill is, Representative Morales is here. It's House Bill 5652. It's an act related to state affairs and government, Rhode Island Sanctuary State Act. It designates schools, places of worship, and courts as sensitive locations and would require that a judicial warrant be obtained before federal immigration authorities could be granted access to those premises to enforce, I assume, United States immigration laws. Representative Morales, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Now, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I want to thank you all again for the opportunity to discuss and consider House Bill 5652. In summary, this bill, as stated by the chairman, would designate schools, health facilities, places of worship, and courts as sensitive locations that would require a judicial warrant before federal immigration authorities can be granted access to those premises to enforce federal immigration laws. Furthermore, local and state law enforcement agencies would be prohibited from cooperating with federal immigration authorities to enforce such immigration laws, with limited exceptions. Such exceptions would include a response to terrorism, domestic violence, or national security threats. Evidently, we would reallocate the use of our public funds and the priorities of our local law enforcement to instead focus on the more pressing issues affecting the quality of life in our communities. Currently, there are an estimated 29,000 undocumented immigrants living across our state, with at least 18,000 citizens living with at least one family member who is undocumented. And our undocumented community is diverse, and they come from all walks of life, from the Dominican Republic, Guatemala, Portugal, Cambodia, and Colombia. Similar to any citizens, they are workers, family members, business owners, taxpayers, and a vital part of our economy. Just this past year alone, undocumented immigrants contributed more than $30 million in taxes to the Rhode Island economy. These tax contributions were as follows: $17.6 million in sales tax, $3.9 million in income tax, and $9.7 million in property taxes. All that to say, it is our undocumented community that helps subsidize and fund parts of our state and local budgets in order to fund the programs that most of our communities depend on. Now, I understand there is a general misconception that undocumented immigrants receive government subsidies and handouts by taking advantage of the system. However, that is entirely false. I want to be clear, undocumented immigrants are not eligible, nor do they receive any public assistance from our state or federal government. In other words, they do not receive Medicaid, food stamps, housing assistance, Social Security income, or welfare cash assistance, despite contributing the tax revenue needed to fund these public benefit programs in the first place. Therefore, when we criminalize these working people that are trying their hardest to provide for themselves and their families, all under the radar, we are actively harming our own economy. Evidently, data-driven studies have shown that local areas with sanctuary-like type policies that do not criminalize undocumented immigrants simply due to their status have healthier economies, from higher median incomes, higher labor force participation, less poverty, and lower unemployment levels. This is especially important during these times, as it has often been undocumented immigrants who have been risking their health on the front lines as low-wage, essential workers, helping keep our economy afloat while providing us with the necessary resources we've needed throughout COVID. Furthermore, several studies have noted that areas with sanctuary policies are also safer, as crime is significantly lower when compared to areas that actively enforce federal immigration laws using local resources. This is evident as there are on average 35 fewer crimes for every 10,000 people in areas with sanctuary policies due to a multitude of factors, from the allocation of local resources, community sentiment with law enforcement, an increased comfort with accessing public services, a willingness to cooperate with law enforcement, and general workforce participation. Similarly, the Major Chiefs Association and the International Association Chiefs of Police, which represent the largest law enforcement agencies in the world, and in the country specifically, have concluded that communities are safer when local law enforcement is not involved in the enforcement of federal immigration laws, as it has an unnerving effect on both legal and undocumented immigrants, who are then more likely to become victims of violent crime and will refrain from assisting law enforcement with criminal investigations. Now, despite the rhetoric and misinformation from our previous presidential administration, sanctuary policies help foster safer communities as opposed to danger and spikes of crime. As I close, I want to be clear that this bill will not and would not prevent ICE from enforcing federal immigration law in the state, as it would only prohibit our local and state law enforcement from coordinating with them and enforcing federal immigration laws themselves. Most importantly, I want to recognize the impact a bill like this will have on our communities across the state, because the implications, unfortunately, are very real. In my day job and in my personal life, I've worked with colleagues and friends who have been forced to helplessly watch as their parents and close family members who have lived in this state and in the country for decades are forced into deportation, into a country that they are not even familiar with. After all, deportations have not ended under the Biden administration, nor will they. As discussed tonight on this bill and others that are to come, our undocumented immigrants are an essential part of our community and the state of Rhode Island, from the contributions to the economy to the socio-emotional value they add to our neighborhoods. They deserve to be protected. Thank you.
Any questions of the sponsor?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Rep. Morales, I just really want to thank you for bringing forward this bill to support our undocumented community and keep all of our communities safer. And I love the idea, as others have done, other states have done, in codifying what ICE has already issued as a policy that they follow. So Immigration and Customs Enforcement already in places of worship and other places, schools, have a policy that do not enter. Of course, mostly under Trump, these policies were just thrown out the window. But I like the idea of our state taking that policy that even the Immigration and Customs Enforcement issued and codifying it into state law to protect our community. So I just want to say thank you for putting this forward because it's a really, really important bill.
Thank you, Rep.
Thank you, Representative Felix. Any other questions of committee members? I'm not seeing any. So we have witnesses, 4 in number. First is David Felix. David? David, you're on the air.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I hope it's okay if I just testify for the 3 bills really quickly that I'm testifying for.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Valise. I am the director for the Rhode Island Interfaith Coalition to Reduce Poverty. I'm also testifying tonight as part of the Rhode Island Poor People's Campaign. Thank you for your time. First on Bill 5652, thank you to Rep. Morales for introducing it. Restricting ICE from sensitive locations. I think of 2 things when I think of this bill. First, as a coalition of faith leaders, we worry about people coming out to faith institutions as well as schools, courts. There's already a lot of fear in the immigrant community to receive services. We do not need to be restricting them anymore. People should be safe and feel free to come and worship and receive the services for their children. Secondly, we shouldn't be, we already criminalized the immigration system. We shouldn't do it anymore. We shouldn't be harassing people for just being here, trying to live a better life. A lot of the times the people that are stopped and harassed don't actually have immigration problems. We do not need to be ripping families away apart. Second bill I want to talk about is 5734. I thank you to Representative Geraldo for introducing it, which would bar landlords from asking whether or not someone is documented or not. We're in a pandemic. We do not need to worry about, creating more barriers for people to be housed, especially with homeless rates have doubled in the last 4 years in Rhode Island. We need to keep people housed and we need to keep people safe. I myself grew up undocumented, and it was for the caring of a local church that we were able to get an apartment. And I know that this is the right path for Rhode Island, where we're caring and taking care of our immigrant community. Lastly, for Bill 5305, thank you to Rep. Williams for always championing this bill, which provides driver's licenses for undocumented Rhode Islanders. I just want to say this bill is something we've been working on for a long time, and it makes a lot of sense. Not only does it make our roads safer by having everyone have insurance and everyone taking the right examination, but it also boosts the economy because it allows people to travel and go to work. It allows families to take their kids to school. A lot of states already done this. I think it's a really good move for Rhode Island. And I'll end by saying that throughout our different faith traditions for the Interfaith Coalition, we are taught to value the traveler, value the immigrant, value the visitor. And throughout all of our texts, we see people in stories of taking care of each other. And I think it's time that we start taking care of our vibrant, prosperous immigrant community that we have here in Rhode Island. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for allowing me to testify, and I hope all of you have a blessed day.
Thank you. Any questions of the witness? Seeing none. The next caller is Ashley Gomes. Ashley? Ashley?
Hi, yes.
Hi, Ashley. You're on the air. You can testify.
Hi. So my name is Ashley Gomez. I am an active member of Testified Rhode Island. It's a grassroots network of women of color focusing on economic empowerment and community-led action. I live in Providence, and I'm in support of Bill 5652 because I'm also the daughter of Mexican immigrants. I grew up having my mother walk me to school every day, and I was well aware that at a young age, she could be here one day and not the next. Having an undocumented parent is something that I wouldn't wish upon any child. It wasn't my choice, but it was my reality, right? And living with a constant fear was definitely something that impacted my mental health, my ability to focus in school. And so it's something that now my nieces and nephews, it's a fear that they have to grow up with. And I really think that children should be able to feel the safest at school, right? I think we can all agree on that, and everyone should be able to feel safe when we go to church, when we go to our kids' parent-teacher conferences, hopefully again soon. We should be able to feel safe in these spaces. And in addition to all of the things that Rep. Morales brought up in terms of the economy and how it also makes our roads safer. Oh, I'm sorry. So about I'm sorry, I was thinking about the other bill, but there's more literature about how this not only affects the health of folks, but more specifically the health of undocumented immigrants who are working here, who are also taking up resources. And if we're doing this to help immigrants, we're also going to help lessen the burden on our healthcare systems as a whole. Thank you. I urge you to vote in favor.
Any questions of the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. And the next witness will be Aaron Papa. Aaron, can you hear me?
Yes.
You may proceed with your testimony.
Oh, there's somebody still talking, I thought.
Hopefully not.
Oh.
Oh. There's a 20-second lag. I think it has something to do with turning off your volume on your computer.
Oh, okay. Hello.
Yes. Go ahead, proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Craven and members of the committee. My name is Erin Papa. I'm a resident of Providence, an educator, and I work alongside immigrants and refugees in our community. I wanted to testify in support of 3 bills, if that's okay right now.
Sure.
House Bills 5305, 5652, and 5734.
Go ahead.
My family has been in this state for many generations, and like many of you, I'm a descendant of immigrants who came here for a better life, started businesses, and made contributions to our state. And when they came, the process to becoming a U.S. resident was as simple as stepping off a boat. But today, this process is so much more complex, and it often leaves our immigrant neighbors in a limbo status, which prevents them from fully realizing their potential contributions to our society, our economy. But just as a reminder, none of these bills are really about immigration, and as state-level legislators, you don't have the power or authority to make decisions about immigration status. But I think you do have the power and authority to ensure that all Rhode Islanders feel safe and supported in our community, that they can live without fear that a landlord might discriminate based on their immigration status, or that ICE may enter their school or place of worship and take their children or parents away, which is a real fear, and that they can safely travel from home to work to school, to care for loved ones, friends, and neighbors. And I think that you all have the power and authority to do this, and I think the responsibility to ensure that all Rhode Islanders are treated with dignity and respect and granted these three bills, but specifically about the driving privileges. This would benefit all of us in the state, because we would have drivers on the road who are paying fees to the DMV. They have to purchase insurance, and that would ensure that really all of us are traveling to home, school, work safely. And there are many other states that have already passed this legislation, and we've been fighting for this for more than a decade here in Rhode Island. And it's been supported by state police, insurance companies, the DMV. I don't see any reason not to pass this now. So I'm hopeful that you will pass H5305 and the other two bills as well, to make our community safer and stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Any questions of the witness? Yes, Representative McAtee.
I don't have a question of the witness. I just want to ask the sponsor a question. How many states have passed legislation like this, Representative?
The ones that come immediately to mind are two of them, that being New York and California. At this point, most sanctuary-like policies are done at the county or municipal level.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, Doc.
So I'm going to interpret that response to mean that the states themselves have not passed a statewide sanctuary.
Aside from, again, New York and California, no. Other states have referred to municipal governments to do that.
So California and New York have passed statewide laws?
Correct.
One more, please,
Sure, go ahead.
Chairman. So in Rhode Island, I believe Providence has passed that kind of ordinance. And I believe my hometown of South Kingstown has done the same thing. I don't know, but do you know any other cities or towns that have passed that in Rhode Island?
Those are the exact two that come to mind, Representative, so I cannot name any others.
Okay, thank you.
Representative, please.
So you'd mentioned New York and California. Is this legislation modeled off of either one?
It is modeled off of New York's.
So is it exactly as close as possible, or what are the differences between New York's and the one you have presented before us today?
Yeah, so one of the key aspects in there is the provision of domestic violence, response to national security threats, and in regards to terrorism. The one in New York was broader.
Any other questions? Okay, we have one more witness, Stephen Brown from the ACLU. Steve, you're on the air.
Thank you again, Chair. If I may, like the other witnesses, if I could briefly address these three immigrant bills together.
You may.
Thank you. The ACLU of Rhode Island supports all three of these pieces of legislation. On 5652, Representative Morales' bill, as he and Representative Felix noted, what the core of this bill attempts to do is simply codify into law a policy that the Department of Homeland Security has had for many, many years, and that is deeming certain locations, hospitals, schools, etc., as sensitive locations where ICE raids or things of that sort should not take place. And it's just a matter of both compassion and common sense. You don't want to discourage people from going to the hospital if they're sick. You want to ensure that children who have the right to go to school and get an education can do that without fear of parents being subject to ICE agents coming out of nowhere as they go to school. So we strongly support that effort. The driver's license bill of Representative Williams is one that the ACLU has also supported for many, many years. We join in the comments that have been given by the other witnesses as to why this is a practical bill. It's a safe public safety bill. and we hope that this is the year that the committee acts favorably on it. And then finally, we also want to express our support for 5734, which is the bill that would ban landlords from inquiring about a tenant or prospective tenant's immigration or citizenship status. We know that this happens right now, and there's no question in our mind that inquiries like that are really just a proxy for discriminating against individuals based on their looks, their ethnicity, their surname. It simply should not be happening. It's no business of a landlord to be asking those questions. So we hope that the committee will give a favorable consideration to all three of these bills. We think they are in the public interest. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Steve Brown from the members of the committee? I don't see any, so that would conclude testimony on this particular piece of legislation. Oh, you have a question?
Sorry, Chairman. I just wanted to mention, I did want to fact check myself. There are actually 11 states that have sanctuary laws in place, not just California and New York. Those are just the two that I was modeling this bill off of. And if I may, they are California, Colorado, Connecticut, our neighbor, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington.
Great. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Covesi has a follow-up, Representative Morales.
So those states have statewide?
Correct.
Not just municipal?
Correct.
Okay, that concludes testimony. Very good job. Thank you. On House Bill 5652, which brings us to the Chairman Shanley portion of our agenda tonight. That's two bills. The first is House Bill 5875. It's an act related to criminals, correctional institutions, and it repeals the provision of the general laws declaring prisoners serving a life sentence as being civilly dead.
Good evening, Chairman. Good
Welcome to the return to the Judiciary Committee.
Good to be back. This
bill. He went off and started his own committee.
What's that?
He went off and started his own committee.
Yeah. Well, it's splintered. I'm glad you allowed me to come back.
I'm expecting by the end of the year there'll be an attack. He'll take over this committee, and then I'll be put in prison or something.
Did you want 150 more bills for your calendar?
No, I'm not raising my hand.
No. Okay. The Roberta said she'd come in on Saturday and Sunday. This bill's a pretty simple bill. It just repeals the civil death statute. So if you're in prison for life now, you have no civil rights. You can't file any civil lawsuits. It puts this back in place. I think the bill that you guys passed earlier today exemplifies why we need to have this. And it's a pretty simple fix. Representative Casimiro.
Yes.
Oh, he's running the show?
He is.
All right. So, Representative, or Chairman, I'm sorry, Chairman. So you know about my parole bill. Like, how does this convolute things with, people getting out on parole earlier, or like somebody gets a life sentence?
No, this is for people, who's serving a life sentence with no chance of parole.
No, so it's only without chance of parole.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome.
And if my information is correct, I think it's somewhere around 42 or 43 people that have such a designation that are still in the ACI.
That may be.
Yes, Dr. Covesi.
Just for my own edification, there's a difference between life and life without parole, correct?
Correct.
So this does not affect people who are with life without parole?
No, this is all it would affect, is people who are life without parole. If you are serving life without parole, right now you are considered civilly dead. This would repeal that provision, so you would be the same as somebody serving life with parole.
Thank you.
If there's, I could see the brow, and your, I've gotten to know Doc well enough to know when he's got a question that hasn't been answered. Nothing to do with the chairman here. I believe the distinction is that when you get life, you have a possibility of parole. When you get life without parole, you call the post office. This is the last change of address. This wouldn't change the fact that that's where you're going to live the rest of your life. It would just mean that you could do things that people who are considered alive can do. like marry, like be sued, and things of that nature. Gift through a will, gift whatever it is you own in life. And as a dead person, you can't do that. And so if you're considered civilly dead, then all of those things, including, I know it sounds strange, but there are folks that have serving life without parole, I don't think in this jurisdiction, but others, who've actually married people from the outside. Not inside, outside. The honeymoon is always a problem, though. There are two witnesses. Oh, I'm sorry, Edie.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. As a former sponsor of this legislation, it does mean that you can't marry, and I believe it also means that a prisoner who felt that she was wrongly treated at the ACI could not bring a suit because she doesn't exist.
Right.
So there are a number of implications for being civilly dead, and some of them pretty serious. And then there's the question: if you were like Scott Hornoff, found innocent, how do we deal with that? Are you reborn, or what happens then? It doesn't make sense to have people be declared civilly dead. I strongly support this bill. Thank you for introducing it.
Any other questions of the sponsor from the members of the committee? I don't see any, but we have two witnesses. The first is Sonia Dione. Sonia?
Yes.
You're on the air. You can proceed with testifying on House Bill 5875.
Thank you. I am attorney Sonia Dio, and on behalf of myself and numerous inmates that I represent who are serving life sentences at the ACI, and as a counsel who has cooperated with the ACLU, I think I am the subject matter expert on the particular issue of civil deaths, and I would like to testify in favor of this bill to repeal that act. I've just been listening to a bit about the discourse between the members of the committee, and this bill would affect individuals both who serve a life sentence with parole and without parole. And that's really one of the main reasons why it is so important that this bill be repealed, or the statute be repealed, rather. First of all, it's cruel and unusual punishment. It's a situation where a person who does serve a life sentence really can't come to state court and file an action, irrespective of the reason for that, if they're being abused by guards, or if they've simply had an incident where they got hurt. So that's sort of the first problem. The second problem is that the statute prevents inmates who are serving life sentences from being able to do basic things like get married. There's a number of studies that show that individuals who are being paroled, if they are married, if they have good family lives, that affects their recidivism and decreases those rates quite a bit. In addition, this statute really is sort of a relic of fiction, and it goes back into the 1850s. Its primary goal at that point was to ensure, in part, that the inmate themselves wouldn't have any of these sort of civil rights, and our country has changed just dramatically over the years, changing that. But one of the goals of the statute was to also allow people who had been married to individuals who were so convicted to receive their property. And I mention that because that's how property rights of women used to work back in the 1850s. And that just shows how old the statute is. I am making various arguments right now as to it being unconstitutional before our Supreme Court, but I really, it would make things much easier and much clearer if the legislature would simply repeal the statute.
Any questions of the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. The next witness is Steve Brown from the ACLU. Steve?
Yes, thank you once again, Chair. On behalf of the ACLU of Rhode Island, I want to express our strong support for this legislation. Attorney Dio, I think, gave a good summary of what it's all about. There are just a few additional points I want to make. When I've testified on this bill in the past, and it's in my written testimony as well, I like to quote from a 1937 Harvard Law Review article, which at that time was calling civil death an archaic law. It's 84 years later, and it's 84 years more archaic, and yet it's still on the books in Rhode Island. And that's my second point. To the best of our knowledge, Rhode Island is now the only state in the country that retains and enforces a law like this on the books. And we hope that we can get rid of that distinction this year. I also want to emphasize the point that's been made about life and the life sentences. What this means, because it does apply to individuals with life sentences, what it means is that person who gets a life sentence but could be eligible for parole after 20 years or 25 years is considered dead. But a person who gets a 70 or 80-year sentence, and not a life sentence, quote unquote, they don't lose any rights at all. It just makes no sense. It's not only archaic, but it really does put an enormous barrier in the way of individuals who want to be able to exercise their rights and go into court and vindicate them. So we hope that the committee this year will finally get rid of the civil death law, bury it in the ground where it belongs. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of Steve Brown? I do not see any from the committee members, so that would conclude testimony on House Bill 5875, which takes us to the second bill by Chairman Shanley that's on our agenda tonight, House Bill 5864. It's an act related to business and professions, confidentiality of healthcare communications and information. It amends the definition of, quote, authorized representative, unquote, in the confidentiality of the Healthcare Communication and Information Act. Chairman Shanley.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a pretty simple bill. It's meant to be provide more clarification than anything. Right now, if you are an heir and you want to request confidential medical records, there are some medical providers that are saying that all eligible heirs have to sign an authorization before those records can be provided, which goes against the rest of the law, which is all you need is one eligible heir to pursue a claim. So in order to get past these medical providers who are interpreting this statute as requiring all heirs to sign off on the release of confidential healthcare information, this is simply going to be that any heir at law is able to get confidential healthcare information, which is the position that most healthcare institutions in the state have taken.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Doc.
Thank you, Chairman Shanley. I think it's a good bill, but I'm a little confused. So, person passes away, you're talking about a son or a daughter?
Yes, any heir at law.
Okay. So let's say that there's some disagreement between, let's say, the deceased has a son and a daughter. The son can request the records. The daughter can request the records. Why can't that be done now the way this is?
So right now, in your situation, say there were two heirs and it was the son and the daughter. You would have to get the signature of both the son and the daughter in order for the records to be released. That is how some medical institutions are interpreting this and applying this. So instead of just saying either the son or the daughter can get the medical records by providing a signed authorization, they're saying that both heirs, because those are all the heirs in this fictitious situation, have to sign the authorization. So if you're in a situation where there are 10 heirs, you have to get signed medical authorizations from all heirs in order to get medical records from some facilities, the way they are reading this statute currently.
A comment and a question. In my office, I don't think we're aware of that. So if a son came to get his father's records, okay, I think as long as they could show that they have either a death certificate or some other form of legal identification with regard to the deceased, I think we would do that. I don't know how many offices, now maybe you're talking about institutions, hospitals, etc., but as far as doctors' offices, I'm not sure they realize that the law could be interpreted this way. I think you cleaning it up is a good thing, but I'm not sure that in a practical setting that they realize that, or that they necessarily interpreted that. Maybe some of the larger institutions. The other question I have is, have you talked to Steve DeToy from the Medical Society?
I have not spoken with Mr. DeToy from the Medical Society. I did speak with the Trial Lawyers Association, and this is an issue that they face with a number of medical providers, and they've indicated their support for it.
I'd be interested to hear what Steve DeToy from the Medical Society has to say, too.
I think most places are interpreting it as long as you are an heir at law, they're going to disclose the records. Right. But there are a few that are saying, well, you could read it like this, so in an abundance of caution, we're going to require you to get every potential heir at law.
It's a small point, but it's a significant point. It's certainly significant to the family members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any further questions? Yes, David.
I just want to be clear. It's just returning. This is all about the S at the end of heirs, right? The plural versus singular.
Correct.
That's all this is about.
That's all this is about.
I'm guessing the larger institutions probably spend a lot of money on lawyers compared to Doc's office, who doesn't. So he probably has a more common sense approach to interpreting this thing.
Yeah.
Representative Place, you have no idea how accurate your statement you made just is. Okay, if there's no further questions, that concludes testimony on Representative Shanley's bill, second bill, 5864. Thank you very much for returning
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
To the Judiciary Committee. Okay, the next bill is by Representative Lombardi, 5879. It's an act related to the General Assembly and lobbying. Prohibits lobbyists from making any political contributions to any member of the General Assembly from January 1 through July 1 in any year unless the General Assembly adjourns for the year prior to July 1. Representative
Thank you,
Lombardi.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee. First of all, I'd like to be marked as being present.
Madam Clerk, would you mark Representative Lombardi present, and he voted positively on, she's not listening. Roberta?
Yeah, I like to be voting in the affirmative on the various matters that you voted on.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of this is a very, very quick. So I put this in, I think, every year that I've been there. What this would do is prohibit lobbyists from making any political contributions while we're in session from January 1st through July 1st, unless we leave earlier, then certainly it would apply. That doesn't prohibit them from donating, from, July 1 through January 1st. And, this would address certainly the appearance of impropriety. We're always under scrutiny, and certainly would eliminate that. Again, they can still donate. That doesn't prohibit their family members or their partners in donating. And what this would do, I think, more importantly, would level the playing field for the lobbyists that are not of the same power or ilk as others, and it would, I think, level the playing field for them. So that's the purpose of the bill. I know that there's going to be objection probably from the ACLU, but again. Obviously, if you like something and you want to donate, that's fine. But again, this is about leveling the playing field. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. If there's any questions, I will try to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions for the sponsor?
Thank you.
Do not see any. Thank you very much. There are no witnesses that signed up to testify. So that concludes testimony on House Bill 5879, which brings me to 5876, sponsored by Representative Baginski. It's an act related to animal and animal husbandry, seizure of animals being cruelly treated, allows defendants to be served a petition at arraignment for animal cruelty. Oh, she's
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm well.
That's good.
Thanks.
Thank you for introducing my bill. It comes to me by way of the Rhode Island chapter of the ASPCA. As I understand it, what's happening now is when someone is criminally charged with cruelty to their pet, the pet is seized and it is held by a shelter until the pet parent's fitness is determined. In some cases, that takes months, weeks, years, based on the judicial system and how quickly the case moves through. And some pets are being left in shelters for undetermined, prolonged amounts of time, which seems unfair to the pet and also places a great burden on the shelter. We tend to think of cats and dogs, but there are shelters that have been housing horses and pigs and other large animals that require much more care and attention. So the goal of this bill is to just codify the process for that hearing to determine the fitness of the pet parent so that the shelter might know how long it's going to have this animal and the animal can get to where it belongs more expeditiously.
Very good. That's a good bill. Are there any questions of the sponsor? I do not see any, and there are no witnesses that signed up. So that concludes testimony on 5876. Thank you very much, Representative.
I wish they were all that easy. Thank you.
Everybody gave up. They're going to agree with you. All right.
I wish. I really do.
All right, the next bill on our agenda is Representative Giraldo. Let's see if he's outside before I introduce it. Representative Giraldo? This is an act related to property and immigration status. It prohibits a landlord from asking about immigration status of a tenant, prospective tenant, occupant, or prospective occupant, or residential rental property. Representative Giraldo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the House Judiciary Committee. I am here today to present H 5734. This act would prohibit a landlord from asking about the immigration status of a tenant, prospective tenant, occupant, or prospective occupant of residential rental property. As a former landlord of a 3-family home myself, I honestly believe this is not a piece of information that is necessary to the tenant selection process at all. I've rented to several tenants of all kinds over many years, and not once, not ever actually, did the need to ask about immigration status or citizenship arise. Aside from it being inappropriate and unnecessary to ask, I feel like a question of immigration status isn't coming from probably the best places and see no use for it at all. A part of me believes that it could possibly be coming from a place rooted in disdain for people that may be different from the landlord. Maybe a different culture, people that look different, for example. I also know that Americans in general have an overall lack of understanding of our unbelievably complicated immigration system. with our various types of visas, residency permits, etc., it can get confusing. And in other cases, this question can be rooted in flat out, plain old racism, to be honest. Something tells me, as you hear tonight, or maybe read in some of the testimony submitted by others, that question is likely meant to target certain ethnic groups or eliminate them from being potential renters. Or, in other situations, to seize on an opportunity to take advantage of them in one of the most absolute worst ways. A way that, to me, is un-American and dehumanizing and is disgusting and should not happen in our country or in our state. So as a first step, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but as a first step to preventing this, we as a nation passed the Federal Fair Housing Act. The act prohibits discrimination based on race or color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. And such discrimination is illegal regardless of the victim's immigration status. And so I get a weird feeling that those in strong opposition of this bill may be trying to find a workaround for not being able to ask someone about their national origin. And national origin discrimination is different treatment in housing because of person's ancestry, ethnicity, birthplace, culture, or language, which is also illegal. That means people cannot be denied housing opportunities because they or their family are from another country, because they have a name or an accent associated with a national origin group, because they participate in certain customs associated with national origin groups, or because they are married or associate with people of certain national origin. But I believe we need to be a little bit more clear and take this necessary step to prohibit asking about status to make sure discrimination isn't happening because of how someone looks. Additionally, it is to ensure that blackmail isn't happening in our communities. It is to make sure that immigration status isn't being used as a way to control people, intimidating them with threats of deportation and possible separation from their children and their families. And I'd like to take a second to talk about how that works. Predatory landlords, many of them that own homes in certain communities, but they don't actually live there, usually located in low-income communities, will use knowledge of their tenants' immigration status as a way to control them, blackmail them, and force them into the worst corners that you could ever imagine. For example, the city that I was born and raised in, more than 75% of the properties are rental properties. And we have our fair share of absentee landlords and bad actors who absolutely take advantage of this. And from growing up in that city and having worked there, I've been privy to several example after example, of tenants being subjected to basically unlivable and deplorable conditions. Toilets and showers completely out of service for weeks on end, ceilings collapsing in a child's bedroom, heat not working in the middle of winter for months with no plan to fix it, and allowed to continue because the landlords knew that the tenants may not have had documentation and threatened to call the authorities if they spoke up about the condition in the apartment. The tenants were enticed originally probably by low rent, and landlords intentionally did not advocate or push for a lease as they knew that they would always have the upper hand. And they threatened to not only throw out the family on the street, but in a moment's notice have their families torn apart with the push of a few buttons on their cell phone, or at least threaten to do so. And just to be clear, there are disgusting predatory landlords of every race and ethnicity, and I've seen many different landlords like that for myself. So although this bill aims to protect and prevent those sort of abhorrent practices, it makes it so that equity prevails when renting an apartment. I'm happy to know and hear that the Rhode Island Commission for Human Rights, the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the ACLU, and many, many other Rhode Islanders support this bill. This one is an easy one in my eyes, regardless of where you stand politically, and ask for your support of this bill. And I would also be remiss if I failed to urge passage of Rep. Williams' bill that I think you're going to hear later on, and Rep. Morales' bill that you probably just, that I believe you just heard. And I thank you all for your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Very good presentation. Any questions of the sponsor? I do not see any, but we have 4 witnesses, which I think that 3 of them have already testified. Christine Contreras-Fox is with us. Christina?
Yes, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Well, thank you. Am I on?
You are on, and you're free to testify.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Chairman Craven and members of the House Judiciary Committee. My name is Cristina Contreras-Fox. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I am the Senior Policy Analyst for the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless. We work in coalition with our members and community partners to create and advance solutions that end and prevent homelessness in Rhode Island. And this includes advocating for policy changes that eliminate barriers in accessing housing and shelter. And discrimination based on immigration status is exactly this kind of barrier. And thus, we strongly support Representative Geraldo's bill 5734, prohibiting landlords from inquiring about immigration status. There is no valid reason to ask a tenant, prospective tenant, occupant, or prospective occupant about their immigration status. Papers do not make a person, and all people deserve safe, secure, affordable home. Housing is not a privilege. Housing is a human right. And discounting someone as a tenant based on immigration status causes significant harm and violence to that prospective tenant and their family. It can and does cause people to experience homelessness. Many immigrants in our state are Black, Indigenous, Rhode Islanders of color who already experience homelessness and housing insecurity disproportionately based on their race and ethnicity compared to white Rhode Islanders. So it is time to take this question off the table entirely. The Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless urges committee members to please get 5734 your full support. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? I do not see any, so thank you very much. That would conclude testimony on Representative Geraldo's bill. Very good job. Thank you. Which brings us to the most comprehensive bill as far as people interested. Tonight, Chairwoman Williams is in the room. Chairwoman Williams, if you would come forward. I'll introduce it briefly as you come up. It's an act related to motor and other vehicles, operators, and chauffeurs' licenses. It would provide that driver's license would be given or allowed to apply for to undocumented immigrants. Chairwoman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love that green. See, it matches my...
Thank you very much.
See? And members of the committee, good afternoon. This legislation allows the Rhode Island Department of Motor Vehicle to issue driving privilege to licenses and driving privilege permits to individuals who are unable to establish a lawful presence in Rhode Island and the United States. Have you know, for the most part, I've been coming before this committee for years. Unless you know an individual's status, you would not know that they were undocumented. We have neighbors, many of us have neighbors, that without knowing, you would not know that they were undocumented. They're loving people, they comply, they're there just like any other person in the neighborhood. The purpose of this legislation is to ensure that all drivers on the road are knowledgeable of traffic safety laws and the safe operation of motor vehicles. This legislation is strictly about the safety of everyone on Rhode Island's road, whether they're legal residents or undocumented residents. These driving privilege licenses and permits are not, however, the equivalent of a regular Rhode Island driving license, and there are several safeguards that have been put in place within the legislation to highlight the differences in privileges. Applicants must provide reliable proof and documentation of their name, date of birth, and place of birth from various different acceptable documents such as a foreign birth certificate, a valid foreign passport, or an expired passport for no less than 3 years, or a valid foreign driver's license with the international driving permit. It also requires 2 forms of proof of a Rhode Island residential address, such as a utility bill or a letter from a shelter or halfway house. It also requires certification from the tax administrator that the applicant has filed tax returns with the state for the past 2 years. An affidavit must be filed with the Department of Motor Vehicle attesting that an application of legalized immigration status has been or will be filed as soon as possible. Applicants must apply and conduct all renewals in person, as well as are subject to all education and tests involved with driving privileges. A driving privilege license holder is unable to apply for a chauffeur's license. Also, the driving privilege license and permit are not valid for federal or state identification purposes. They cannot be used if the applicant has been convicted of any felony in this or any other state as well. There are also safeguards in place to eliminate discrimination against driving privilege license or permit holders, such as it cannot be used as evidence of citizenship or immigration status, and it cannot be used as a basis for criminal investigation, arrest, or detention. And it will be illegal to discriminate against any individual because they hold or present a driving privilege permit or license. In conclusion, this legislation is about driver safety on our roads. Everyone needs to be tested and know the safety protocols to keep every driver safe on the road, whether they are documented residents or not. It's an ongoing situation with regards to driver's license being allowed to undocumented our neighbors. Just think for a second. We are in the midst of a pandemic. And I say amidst because still for some, it's still a beginning. For many, still struggling. And for the privilege, they're making through. To get to some of these sites, to get the help, is very daunting. Not having an opportunity of driving legally is an issue. You may have access to a vehicle, but you don't have a license. In this time that we are all faced with and dealing with, just think about those individuals right now. Think of the hardship that they're enduring. Just for a second, we who have access to almost everything, just think for a second, put yourself in their shoes for a second. How have they been getting by? How have they been making it to the clinic? It's really something for us to think about. But it's time, as I have mentioned, that we are in a crossroads of change, and it is time. And this can happen if you all, we all, want and are ready to make it happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, the boss. That is my testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are there any questions from committee members? Looks like we have Representative Baptista.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, acting as Chair. I want to thank Representative Williams for putting this bill forward. This has obviously been a topic that has been at the State House for several years now. I just want to add one little anecdote in terms of my experience as an attorney who practices mostly in criminal defense. Several years ago, I was happy to see that the state was successful in essentially, on the topic of driver's licenses, decriminalizing the first 3 offenses before even the first offense of driving without a license was a crime. Why does that matter? Because sadly, in some communities in our state, people become known to the police. And when I was a public defender, it was not uncommon to see these folks who were undocumented charged and recharged with driving without a license that they couldn't get. And so this bill would help fix that problem. And I just, there's a lot of reasons why it's unfair. I think Representative Williams did a great job outlining that. But I wanted to add that experience about what happens in the district courts when folks are, the first fine was $250, and the second offense would be $350, and then the third offense would be $500, and then after that, you start talking about probation and criminal punishment. So it's a very serious issue. There's tons of layers of unintended consequences, and my summary is I appreciate Representative Williams for her leadership on this issue, and I enthusiastically support this bill.
Thank you, Representative Baptista. Any questions? Any other questions?
May I say something else too?
Oh, certainly.
Just
Madam Chairwoman.
Keep in mind that this matter before you right now was also a promise that Gina Raimondo had made to the community as part of her campaign, that she would do this through executive order. And the last I had spoken with her before she had decided to abandon Rhode Island, both her and Brett Smiley, and they threw it to the House of Representatives saying that if the House passed it, she would sign it. Unfortunately, the House did not make the promise as she did. Now that she's gone, once again, we have the opportunity to fixing the wrong and fulfilling the promise, the broken promise that she made. So I needed to put that on the record.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Williams. And I think as well, this is high time we do this. It's a good bill. And we've heard some very compelling testimony over the years. And how many years have we heard this? I think every year since I've been here, so.
How many years of that?
I'm on year number 6.
Okay, so try at least a decade, but let's not go for 17 like driving while black.
Well, thank you for putting it in, and I think you'll get some support from the committee just looking at the faces here today. So, and I believe Representative Felix wants to speak.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I just want to also express my support for this legislation. And just reminiscing, sitting here, right, I've come to the State House previously testifying in support of this legislation for years. And then now being on the other side and being able or have the opportunity, hopefully, to vote on this legislation means a lot to me. And I just want to say to Rep. Williams, thank you for not giving up on the community. You've been a fierce advocate in fighting for this issue and many more issues. So I just want to say thank you. And I really do hope that this is the year that we bring it up and that we vote on it and that the House just passes it, because it impacts all of us. I don't know if any of you have been into an accident with someone without insurance or without a license. It is an unnecessary headache. So for the benefit of all of our community members, all of our residents, I really do hope that this is the year that it passes. Thank you.
I think there's no downside to it. I mean, now that we have President Biden, I think that things will get better for undocumented persons. And I think that there was a concern with our prior president that, could have been, we could have had problems with this bill, but I think now I don't see any reason why we can't move forward with this. I don't see a downside. Anyway.
There wasn't a downside before President Biden got in here. It was just a perpetrating of a fraud, period. Because it didn't need to have a good president in order for us to do good legislation.
You're right. Thank you. So with that, I guess we'll start going through the witnesses. Our first witness is Leticia Salazar. The teacher, are you with us? I hope I'm saying your name right.
Yeah, it's Nikta, but I am with you guys.
Welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Hello, thank you for hearing my testimony today. My name is Nikta Salazar. I'm a voter in Providence, Rhode Island, and a public school teacher in Central Falls. I'm speaking right now strongly in favor of House Bill 5305, which would grant driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. I work in a city that is primarily composed of immigrants, and I see how necessary it is for folks to have access to transportation. I mean, the reality is the world we live in, most people need to be able to drive to either have a job and make money for their families, go to doctor's appointments, take care of their children, go grocery shopping. All of these things people need cars to do because of the way our systems are set up in our society. So really, like, the issue right now, right, is like people need to drive. How do we make it so that people who are undocumented can drive legally so they're not breaking the law, right? For our safety, for everyone's safety, we want to make sure that the people who are on the road or people who have been trained to do so can legally do so, and that it won't interfere with their ability to provide with their family. So I speak strongly in favor on behalf of my students, their families, and my family members who are undocumented, that people be able to legally get driver's licenses so they can, legally do something that's essential to them.
Well, thank you very much, Nikita. I think I said it right this time, for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Thank you again, and seeing none, we go on to our next witness, who is Katarina Lorenzo. Katarina, are you with us?
Yes.
You have the floor. This is House Judiciary.
Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, members of the House Committee on Judiciary. My name is Katarina Lorenzo. I am the director of AMOR, a coalition of Rhode Island grassroots organization. I'm calling today to talk about the importance of the bill H 5305, Bill for Undocumented Community in Rhode Island. In our experience, one of the most common requests we get through the AMOR support line and in our office is to help people in the undocumented community with transportation, especially women with children, so that they can go to important appointments and meetings. And as everybody knows, also, like, public transportation in Rhode Island does not provide good and timely service in all of our neighborhoods. Most people depend on a car as a primary means of transportation. We have seen the importance of driver's license to our community. People need to get around, but they don't want to break the law or drive without insurance. Many people who would otherwise buy a car to be more independent and productive cannot because they don't have access to driver's license. That's why this issue of raising importance for all Rhode Islanders, for the general safety of our roads, and in particular for undocumented families in our community who need to get around. Undocumented families need to be able to drive to the doctor, bring their kids to school, buy food at supermarket, enjoy a beautiful afternoon at the park or beach, go to worship of their church, and visit their family, friends, and in general, just participating in the community. Especially now, during the pandemic, transportation for undocumented families has become much more difficult, as it is no longer safe to share rides because of the virus. This is not just a simple inconvenience, but has compounded the challenge of life and making a living during an already challenging time. That's why I'm calling, and of course, in name of our community, I ask that you vote and in favor of the bill H 5305, and that's why I'm calling. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katarina. Any questions for this witness from the members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Andrew Poyant. Andrew, are you with us?
I'm here.
You have the floor. This is House Judiciary.
Hi, thank you. Hi, my name is Andrew Poyant. I am a resident of Providence. I'm calling in support of House Bill 5305, which provides licenses to our undocumented neighbors and residents of the state. I've called in support of this bill in the past. It's been proposed multiple times now. We already have 16 states and the District of Columbia, and that already is doing this. This is nothing new. Anyone who is calling in opposition to this bill, all the concerns that they may have already been addressed and have already been solved by other states. It's a simple way to make sure that everyone who is driving has a license and goes through the same process and makes driving and pedestrians and cyclists safer for everyone, because we are assuring that everyone is taking a driver's license exam and is passing it and getting a license. In neighboring Connecticut, once they passed this law, they saw a pretty significant decrease in the number of hit and runs, as well as a decrease in other accidents. And specifically, they saw an even larger increase in cities where there are higher populations of undocumented immigrants. And so I support this bill. It makes common sense. It's the humane thing to do to allow people to drive and be able to go where they need to go. And it will make roads safer for all of us. So I hope that this year is the last year that I have to testify on this, and I hope that you move to have this to a full vote of the House. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions of this witness from any members of the committee? Seeing none, we're going on to our next witness, Rebecca. Oh, Linda Katz. Linda Katz is our next witness. Linda, are you with us?
I'm with you.
Welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Vice Chair McEntee and members of the committee. And I have to say, I'm so thrilled to hear you say that this is a bill whose time has come. So I'm Linda Katz. I'm the Policy Director of the Economic Progress Institute. I just have a couple points to make, just to amplify on the previous speaker who stated that 16 states at District of Columbia and Puerto Rico have enacted driver's license laws for undocumented folks. I just want to point out that this is really a wave, and Rhode Island really needs to join the wave of other states that are doing this. New Jersey, New York, and Oregon passed this law in 2019. Last year, Virginia became one of the 16 states to protect immigrant drivers, and all of us, as has been said, if everybody has a license, we're all safer because people know the rules of the road. And also just sort of piggybacking on the previous speaker in terms of the Connecticut experience, I submitted written testimony that both links to the a study that was done in Connecticut, which documented the decrease in hit-and-run crashes, particularly among communities where there were large numbers of undocumented. I think the other point I want to make, besides all of the reasons that we should do this for humane reasons, is the fact that in Connecticut they realized $7.5 million in licensing fees over the 4 years after the law was enacted, which was offset just by the $300,000 that was required to implement the new program. And it also helped with policing, that officers who pulled the driver over who didn't have a license had to process that person. It took the officer out of commission for an hour or two, but if the person has a license, then they can just issue a ticket if somebody is not driving according to the rules. You hear the testimony from folks about why this is so important from the standpoint of the individual. I would just say that certainly COVID has taught us that we're all one family, we're all interdependent, and we need to just pass this bill as an absolute fairness issue to support all of our neighbors, regardless of their status. Thank you for hearing my testimony.
Thank you, Linda. Any questions from any member of the committee? Seeing none, we'll go on to our next witness, Miguel Sanchez. Miguel, are you there?
Yes.
So welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Hi, good afternoon, committee members. My name is Miguel Sanchez. I'm here as a Providence resident, community advocate to testify in support of Bill 5305. I also support Bills 5652 and 5734 that also support immigrant rights. I would like to first thank all of the sponsors on all of these important bills. Providing driver's license for all, regardless of immigration status, is something that is very dear to my heart. As a Mexican-American Providence resident that lives here in the Mayton neighborhood, I have a lot of friends and neighbors that unfortunately don't have a driver's license because of their immigration status. Not having a driver's license is something that causes a lot of unwarranted stress and anxiety to my neighbors. A driver's license is vital to completing everyday tasks such as being able to take your kids to school, to go to work, to go to the grocery store, and sometimes even just to find employment. A driver's license would certainly provide a lot more opportunities to communities that are marginalized already, even so more now that many of them didn't qualify for unemployment benefits or the stimulus checks during the pandemic. There are 17 states that already have some form of this bill in law, and I believe it's now time that Rhode Island follows suit. Lastly, I would like to give a big shout out to all the community members and local organizations for all the work they have been doing here in Rhode Island and across the country in fighting for this piece of legislation. Thank you for all your time, committee members.
Thank you, Miguel. Any questions of Miguel? Seeing none, our next witness is Jonathan Goldman. Hello, Jonathan. Are you with us?
Hi, yes.
This is House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Goldman, and I am calling in support of House Bill H5305. I'm the executive director of the Student Clinic for Immigrant Justice, which trains students to provide free legal services to asylum seekers and organize for immigrant justice. And we have many students that we've trained at Brown University and who are representing asylum seekers in Rhode Island right now. And I'm calling in support of this bill because for us and for the clients that we work with, limiting access to driver's licenses also can limit people's access to justice. It's the tool that people need to be able to get to work, to pick up their children from schools, to getting to meetings, to going to the beach. But in addition to it being a tool for people to be able to just live their lives, it's also something that has been shown time and time again that when people have access to driver's licenses, it also improves public safety, makes people more likely to report when there's an accident happen. When people have insurance, they're more likely to not have accidents that they leave from, and has a big benefit all around for that reason. But in addition to that, there's also the economic benefits that come from it, people being able to more readily take different jobs that may require transportation via a car. And then also from a health perspective, particularly right now during the pandemic where people have to be getting shots, making sure they're able to get to the doctor, and where also public transportation right now can be dangerous for many, this also ends up being a public health issue as well. And we've seen time and time again from talking with their clients issues that they have with public transportation or just needing the flexibility in their lives that comes with having a car, that it is a necessity for so many of the people that we work with. And we're grateful for the work that so many other organizations like the Immigration Coalition of Rhode Island and more and so many others have done leading on this advocacy. And we hope that Rhode Island, too, can join with so many other states in being a champion on this issue, too. So I thank you all, and I hope that we can see this bill pass this year.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Any questions of this witness? A lot of good points being put out there today. Like I said before, I don't see any downside, but that's just me. Next is Daniel Denver. Daniel, are you with us?
Yes. All right.
Yes? Hello?
Can you hear me all right? Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello? Is that Daniel?
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Daniel?
Yes. Hello? Hello?
Daniel, turn your TV down, or maybe a mute button is on, or turn your volume up. We can't hear you.
Let me try. Can you hear me now?
We're starting to.
Okay. Is now okay?
No, a little louder.
Okay, I'll speak loudly.
Oh, there you go. All right,
Okay.
welcome to House Judiciary.
Thank you for having me. Apologies. My cell phone service is a little spotty.
No problem.
My name is Daniel Denver. I'm a co-chair of Reclaim Rhode Island, a grassroots statewide volunteer-powered organization organizing for social and economic justice across the state. I'm here to ask the legislature to finally follow through on a long-delayed and very basic measure of justice that needs to be delivered to Rhode Island's undocumented immigrants, driver's licenses. Our state depends upon the exploitation of undocumented workers to build our homes, cook our food, clean our hotel rooms, and care for our sick and elderly. And yet the state of Rhode Island treats them as though they are only workers and not as full people, not as our neighbors. Our corporations exploit their work, but then our government denies them the right to legally drive to work. That puts them in jeopardy of arrest, and those arrests put them at jeopardy of becoming entangled with the federal government's huge deportation pipeline. It's really disturbing to me that Donald Trump's brazenly anti-immigrant presidency wasn't enough to already make this happen in Rhode Island during the Raimondo administration. 16 states in the District of Columbia have enacted laws already to allow undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. Rhode Island right now is way behind. We need to fix this now, and I urge the legislature to take steps to do so. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Daniel. Any questions for this witness from the members of the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to Eduardo Sandoval.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Ashley, she already testified, I thought. Is she? I've got her. Okay, fine. Hello, Ashley, are you with us?
Hi.
Hi.
Okay.
Welcome to House Committee on Judiciary. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for hearing me today. My name is Ashley Gomez. I live in Providence. As I mentioned earlier, I'm an active member of Sister Fire. I'm also a public health scholar and practitioner, and I'm here in support of House Bill number 5305. The importance of a license for undocumented immigrants has become even more apparent now during the pandemic. Those who rely on public transportation put themselves at an additional risk to be exposed to the virus, and so many folks in the community rely on others for driving and help with transportation to meet their basic needs. Over the past year, Sister Fire has been engaged in mutual aid work that's required us to drive members of the community to obtain their groceries, get routine medical care, and obtain their medication from their pharmacy. Curbside pickup is not an option for when you don't have a license. So I'd like to share a brief interaction I had recently with an undocumented woman who lives in North Providence, someone who Sister Fire has been assisting through our mutual aid work since the pandemic started. She and her family began to feel sick and were concerned about possibly having COVID. When I quickly looked up nearby testing locations for her, there weren't any walk-up locations near her available for several days. When I asked her if she had a car, she responded by saying she can't obtain a license due to her status. She relied on testifier and neighbors in order to meet her basic needs during this time. More people will engage in public health safety practices if you give them access to a driver's license. Giving undocumented immigrants access to licenses would even help us during the vaccine rollout, giving people more access to drive up vaccine locations as we look towards the future. And so thank you all for being here today, for listening to me today. I think we can make a big step towards addressing health disparities by pushing this forward and also bring us one step closer to beating the virus. I urge you to vote in favor of 5305. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. And you're absolutely right. The more people who get vaccinated, the quicker we'll get back to normal. So thank you for your testimony. Next, we have, any questions from members of the committee? No, hearing none. Sorry, Edie, Representative Ajello.
Madam Vice Chair, I just would like to point out that scrolling through some of the documents the committee received on this legislation, the DMV is supporting this, saying they can do it. They would need more employees to handle the heavier load of request for these licenses, but they can do it, and point out that they can learn from how Connecticut and other states have done it. So,
thank you for that, Representative Ajello. That's a very good point. Representative Casimiro.
I just want to thank Representative Ajello for pointing that out. During this pandemic, it has been incredibly difficult to have verbal testimony, and written testimony has been flying in. I think it's been neglected on so many levels. So thank you, Representative Ajello.
Thank you both. Good point. Very good point. So, and like you said, Edie, Connecticut is a prime example of how they made so much money in the long run, even though it cost them in the beginning. So, no, the time has come, I say, but. Next, we have Eduardo Sandoval. Eduardo, are you with us? Sí. Yes. Welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Okay.
Que estabas ahí conectado.
Okay.
Go ahead. Are you ready to testify?
¿Está listo para? Sí. Yes.
Well,
I speak Spanish and translate other person. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Mi nombre es Eduardo Sandoval.
My name is Eduardo Sandoval.
Soy el presidente de la Asociación de Vecinos de Olney.
Is the president of
Asociación de Vecinos de Olney.
Association of Neighborhood of Olneyville.
Mi apoyo es hacia las personas que necesitan una licencia de conducir.
He's taking a support for all the people who need a license.
Porque son trabajadores esenciales.
Because they need to go to work.
Eso hace posible que los productos, o sea, los vegetales, la comida, sea más barata.
And that makes the produce we consume, it's going to be cheaper.
Porque al no haber estas personas trabajando, arriesgándose todos los días manejando las carreteras,
if we don't have those people who are working for less money, then everything is going to be too expensive.
Lo que vemos que en las carreteras de Rhode Island,
and we see that in all the roads in Rhode Island,
Connecticut y Massachusetts,
in Massachusetts,
que es donde se encuentra la mayor parte de nuestra gente trabajadora.
It's where we find all the Spanish workers.
Es por eso que nosotros apelamos hacia una licencia de conducir.
That's why we are looking for them the driver's license.
Para que los productos de primera necesidad sigan siendo económicos.
Because we need all the products. It will be more cheaper for all the people.
Recordemos también que el beneficio económico que va a tener el Estado
And just to remind you that all the economic issue, it's going to help to the state too.
porque las personas van a renovar su licencia y que eso tiene un costo.
Because all these people, it will renew their license and it's going to be more money for the state.
También al mismo tiempo las calles son más seguras.
And also all the roads, it's going to be more safety.
Porque todo el mundo tiene su seguranza y su licencia.
Because everybody is going to have their own license and insurance.
Así que ya los otros más factores económicos yo sé que lo aportarán.
So all other things and support.
También el beneficio de la familia llevando a sus hijos a las escuelas.
And it's going to be beneficial for all these people because they can take to their kids to the school. And it's going to be more safety for them.
Esperamos el apoyo en esta legislación.
And we hope all the support from all these people.
Porque es muy importante contar con el apoyo de ustedes.
Because it's very important to have your support.
Ya que estamos hablando de personas que son esenciales para la economía del Estado.
Because we are talking about all these people which are very essential for the state of Rhode Island.
Eso es mi participación el día de hoy.
And that's all I need to say.
Thank you, Eduardo. Any questions for Eduardo from members of the committee? Seeing none, we'll go on to the next witness, Rodrigo Pimentel. Rodrigo, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Chair McEntee and the House Judiciary Committee.
Good evening.
I am the Rhode Island National Committee representative for the Young Democrats of America. I'm also a dreamer who has lived, worked, and studied in our state for the past 23 years, so I really appreciate this opportunity to testify on this bill.
Great. So proceed.
Yes, so in 2018, I shared my story with fellow Rhode Islanders, the General Assembly, and local media in an effort to advocate for DACA recipients like myself who are in jeopardy of losing their driver's licenses if the program ended at the federal level. Thankfully, our state acted and passed a law ensuring that DACA recipients would be issued driver's licenses regardless of future federal policy, protecting 1,400 Rhode Islanders like me. That moment, where I introduced then Governor Gina Raimondo at the bill signing, showed to me that there is power when people come here to testify and share their stories, that committees like this one here do listen. Now, with House Bill 5305, our state has an opportunity to build a more equitable future for all Rhode Islanders. We're in the middle of a global health crisis. Undocumented immigrants have worked in essential roles throughout the pandemic, working in industries such as medical and food services. As we work to heal and rebuild America, we must not leave behind essential undocumented workers who have sacrificed their health in keeping us safe and essential economic industries running. And not only will this help undocumented workers that are part of our essential labor force, but this will also benefit our state. According to a report published by the Latino Policy Institute in 2016, allowing Rhode Islanders to earn a driver's license, regardless of their immigration status, would result in over $800,000 in additional revenue to the state. The Division of Motor Vehicles echoes this, stating in their own written testimony that the anticipated annual revenue from issuing these licenses would be $856,000 per year. Considering this, I urge the committee to recommend passage of this bill. In doing so, Rhode Island would join 16 other states and Washington, D.C. in offering driver's licenses for all. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Rodrigo, and thank you for hanging in there with this legislation. I remember seeing you before. So, any questions of this witness? Seeing none, we'll go on to our next witness. Susili Urillo. Hello, Susili, are you with us?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Isabelli Murillo, and I'm a constituent. But I'm not only a constituent. I'm an immigrant mom who came to this country when I was a little girl. Why do we need the licenses? Well, for me, it will represent having a better job, a better living for my kids, and not being afraid of driving. I don't drive right now, and I'm not able to do anything I want because I don't have a driver's license. Also, I would love to pay taxes like you people complain about it. I would love to pay for them because it helps our community. I'm a community leader as well, as an advocate, and I'm going to advocate to whatever our rights need to be heard and wherever you need a voice because I'm tired. I'm tired of this being discriminated for not having a driver's license because it wasn't my fault. I'm tired because I'm a human being just like anybody else who is in a free country like all of us claim. And we come to this country for the dream. And having a driver's license for some of you wouldn't be nothing important, but for people like us, it's a dream come true. And it opens doors, opportunities, and better jobs. But at the same time, it will bring revenue to our city. Why? Because we will be able to pay in taxes, buying cars, paying for driver's license, paying for tickets, paying for insurance. So let's be smart about it. Let's be conscious, but at the same time, let's be human beings about it because there is families involved, there is kids involved, and none of us had an option to be whether we needed to decide to be or not in this country. So right now, all we're asking is for an opportunity to just be like the rest of you. Thank you, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all. Have a good night.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well, Cicely, and thank you for your testimony. Hopefully this will be your year.
Amen.
Any questions from any of the members of the committee? Seeing none, our next witness is Isabelli Garcia. Isabelli, are you with us?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm good. Hi, good afternoon.
Welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Isabelli Garcia. I'm Dominican. I'm undocumented. I've been living in Providence for 20 years. I got 2 sons. I'm a single mother. My husband passed away back in 2012. And this is my 3rd time testify about this bill. And as a single mother and as me representing my community, like I know there's a lot of single mothers out there just like me. We always struggling, and it's important for us to you guys pass this bill for us to give a better life to our children. Maybe to go to an appointment without not being scary or to a park. One of my sons want to play football, but it's difficult for me, to take it to practice because I got to pay Uber or I always got to ask for a ride or something like that, Then sometimes I don't want to break the law, but like, as a single mother, and I have to go out there and do anything to provide for my kids. Sometimes I do have to drive, and I don't want to break the law no more. I'm always scared to drive because, like, I know I understand if I get pulled over, it's going to be hard. But all I know for me and as a many single mother out there, if you guys can do us a favor so our children can have a better life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isabelli. Any questions for this witness from the members of the committee? Seeing none, we'll go on to Fernanda Poyant. Fernanda, are you with us?
Yes, hi, sorry.
Welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
All right, so my name is Fernanda Poyant. I am a resident of Providence, and I'm writing in favor of the bill that's looking to give undocumented immigrants driver's licenses. I just think that, if you want to be more, if you want people to be safe on the roads, then it's probably a good idea to have them go through the driving test, the licensing exam. I think that people are driving without the license because they need to go back and forth from work. We don't have, a good public transit, although I wish we did, we don't. So we know these people are driving out there, and we know it's unsafe because, they don't have a license, they're not paying for the insurance. So I think it would be a good idea to implement the law that would qualify people without documents to get their licenses, that would generate revenue for the state, through insurances. It would make the roads safer. There's many other states in the country that have been doing this, and they've seen less incidents of like hit and run. Just all around, I think it would make our roads safer for our children. People working class, people that sometimes can have access to a better job just because of transportation. So, I think there's a lot of data out there from all the other states that have done it, and they have had positive results. So I think Rhode Island would benefit from following in their footsteps. And that's it.
Thank you, Fernanda. Any questions of this witness? Seeing none, we'll go on to our next witness, Taylor Ellis. Okay, Juan Garcia, are you with us?
Hello?
Hello, Juan. Welcome
Yes.
to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I will say my testimony is it's very important to pass to Bill on 6503 because a lot of people, undocumented people, is working in the first line for a food restaurant and many things we can do to help to the people take a food. And a lot of people, have a driver license. Sometimes we pay $100 or $200 a week for somebody give it a driver license. They give it right to the job. That doesn't happen as the owner to the job. As we have to take advantage with those people, with the undocumented people. That the other thing is, it's very important to drive a license for the economy to the state, because a lot of people, we want to take a driver license for make companies, make a business, and restaurants and everything. That's very important to the bill 6503 we pass. I'm going to support that bill, especially for the economy to the United States, for security on the road, for Rhode Island is going to protect the human right for the people.
Thank you, Juan, for your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Were you finished?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. Any questions of this witness from any member of the committee? Seeing none, we'll go to Allison Trull. Hi, Allison. Are you with us?
Hi, yes, I am.
Welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Allison Trull. I'm a resident of Providence, Rhode Island, and I would like to express my strong support for House Bill number 5305. I work as a clinical therapist that works specifically with Spanish-speaking populations. I'm bilingual English and Spanish, and I work specifically with teenagers and their families. I believe that this bill would allow clients of mine and their families better access to their appointments that are important for their health. So that would be appointments to see their doctors or specialists, or for therapy appointments as well. And for some of my clients, these appointments are life or death issues. They could be related to chronic illnesses, like HIV, hepatitis, cancer, diabetes, you name it. They could be life or death issues that they need to get their appointments, and they don't even know how they're going to get there. And I've seen this time and again. I also have a lot of families who can't get to appointments with me that I would love to see them have the ability to. And I also believe that these licenses, or the ability to even get and apply for a license, would allow these families and individuals to get their basic life needs met better. They could get to the grocery store to go grocery shopping. For those who have kids, they can get their kids to and from school when needed. I would like to invite any of you who are parents yourselves to try to imagine what it would be like to be a parent with no car. It's really hard to think about how you're going to get kids to extracurriculars, to appointments, to what have you, without a car, without a license to drive a car, sorry. I also believe that this would allow people who are working to be able to get licenses to get to and from work. So undocumented workers make up a large part of our frontline workers working essential jobs right now during this pandemic and putting their lives at risk. Many work jobs that are inconvenient hours and work for low wages, and then they have to spend money on taxis and rideshare apps that just sap their wages more. And finally, I believe this bill is important because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and people need to be able to transport themselves to all the places they need to go without being required to take public transit or carpooling because of safety and health risks. We've seen time and again, too, that people are carpooling with each other, and it's causing the spread of COVID-19, and also taking public transit on crowded work hours can be a health risk as well for many people. I really hope you'll do the right thing and pass this bill. There are currently 15 other states, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, who have already allowed driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants, and I hope that Rhode Island can join that group of states and do the right thing and pass this bill once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Any questions of this witness? Seeing none, we'll go on to our next witness, Diana Arugio. Diana, are you with us?
Hi, yes, this is Diana.
Diana, well, welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorary Madam Vice Chair and committee members. My name is Diana Araujo, and I'm a resident of Providence, and today I would like to express my strong support of House Bill number 5305 that allows driver's licenses for undocumented people in Rhode Island. As previously mentioned by other constituents and community members in support of this bill, unfortunately, our public transportation system does not provide a good or timely service in all of our neighborhoods. And driving is the best option for most people to get around in our state. This is a mobility need in order for us to get to school, to work, to do groceries, to go to the bank, and many other tasks that we have in our daily routine as Rhode Islanders. This bill, or versions of this bill, have been introduced year after year, and it always fails to pass. As a youth advocate and adult ally who has worked with many immigrant youth or children of immigrants, I deeply think of the opportunities young people in mixed status families cannot access or get to because their guardians don't feel safe to drive them there. I think about how this year widens the gap for all youth and families in Rhode Island to access the same as those who don't have to worry about the external fears or have to worry about possible family separation. I support this bill because it's more than licenses. It's about active members of our community that contribute to the economy, who deserve to be seen and deserve to drive our roads safely. It's about a safer roads for all of us, and also for a little sense of relief for our neighbors, our youth, and other people very close to my heart. Thank you for listening to me today, and I kindly ask you to think of our roads, of our youth and their families, to also think of our neighbors, and I ask you to support the passage of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Any questions of this witness? Hearing none, our last witness is Evan Rosinski. Evan, are you with us?
Yep.
Welcome to House Judiciary. You have the floor.
Thanks. My name is Evan. I live in Providence, Ward 13. I'm testifying in support of HB 5305. I'm in favor of driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. I believe all Rhode Island residents and families deserve mobility and safe roadways. As it stands, public transportation does not provide the timely service that is needed in all neighborhoods of Providence. And this looks to become even more so the case in the near future with recent city moves to convert Kennedy Plaza and to crack down on alternate transportation modes such as ATVs. So people's options for mobility are limited, and we need to take action to reverse this trend. Undocumented families need licenses to buy cars so they can drive to the doctor, bring their kids to school, buy food at the grocery store, enjoy our beautiful parks, go to church or visit family and friends, and participate in their communities. So I call on the committee to pass House Bill 5305 for the good of our community.
Thank you, Evan. Any questions from any member of the committee from this witness? Seeing none, that concludes all the testimony, except I do know that Representative Place would like to make a comment.
Well, not a comment, just a general question. It's not necessarily a comment on the legislation itself, but on follow-on issues. People who qualify for these IDs under this legislation, and this could be my ignorance on the subject, can they qualify for automotive insurance? So they can't, but I know, so that's what I was wondering.
Williams, why don't you...
Yes, they would qualify for automobile insurance. In addition to that, the automobile insurance companies also was in favor of this. So it's not an issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Representative Place. And that concludes our testimony on House Bill 5305.
Thank you. Our next bill comes to us from Chairman Abney. Unfortunately, he's not able to make it, so I told him I would introduce the bill. It's an act related to courts and civil procedure generally, causes of action particularly. It exempts independent third-party contractors from liability for the unauthorized use of the name, portrait, or picture of the right of privacy of an individual from appropriation of one's name or likeness pursuant to a contract with a third party. Difficult explanation, but we do have two witnesses that have signed up, and the first is Tony Mills. Tony?
This is Tony.
Hi, Tony. You are welcome to the House Judiciary Committee testifying on Marvin Abney's bill, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman. Thank you, and members of the House Judiciary Committee. My name is Tony Mills. I'm a graphic designer and website designer working as an independent third-party contractor in Newport, Rhode Island. Last year, at my request, Representative Abney introduced this same bill in the House to amend Rhode Island laws 9128 and 9128.1 to exempt independent third-party contractors from liability and lawsuits when a client who has hired their services provides them with the person's name, portrait, or picture for use in the company's print or digital media for commercial use without that person's permission. On March 10th last year, I testified in person before this committee. It was the last day the State House was open to public hearings before the COVID-19 shutdown. Sadly, the House bill fell victim to the shutdown and did not move forward. This year I am back requesting both the House and Senate please pass bills to make sure the Rhode Island laws are amended this year. In May 2019, I was added as a defendant in the Third Amendment of a lawsuit as a website designer because the plaintiff was in 2 employee group photographs on a company website. I was hired as an independent contractor and supplied with employee photographs and instructions to include them on the company website I designed. The photographs were taken by a professional photographer hired by SHS Pest Control and as such company-owned digital assets. The photographs were of employees taken at work during business hours. The basis of the lawsuit was the plaintiff, now ex-employee, was in photographs on the company website after her employment was terminated. The plaintiff had not given written permission to use photographs that included her on the company website. Because I was named specifically as the website administrator in responses to the plaintiff's complaint, I was added as a defendant to the third amended complaint. Another independent contractor was likewise added as a defendant to the lawsuit as the company's social media manager. The plaintiff was in a group employee photograph posted on the company Facebook page. The social media manager had not posted the photograph. In fact, she was not hired until 3 years after the photograph was posted. As independent third-party contractors hired to work on a company's website and social media accounts, we should not be held liable for the actions or omissions of a company that are out of our control. In this case, the responsibility was on SHS Pest Control as employer to have signed releases and permissions from all employees for photograph usage, both during and after employment. It was not our responsibility as hired contractors to ensure those written permissions existed or to know the employment status of people in photographs supplied to us. Today I'm asking you to please approve the bill to protect independent third-party contractors from liability in lawsuits when a client who has hired their services provides them with company-owned assets that include a person's name, portrait, or picture for use in the company's media without that person's permission. I thank you for your time and attention to my testimony. Thank you.
Any questions of the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. The next witness is John Hirschbeck. Unavailable. Okay, then that would conclude testimony on Chairman Abney's bill, 5877, and takes us to the last bill tonight. It is sponsored by Representative Morgan. Hang on a minute. Okay, I'll introduce the bill. It's an act related to public officers and employees and involves the Code of Ethics. It requires a member of the General Assembly who receives any financial payments from any entity or employer seeking legislative approval to file a written recusal. Okay. Yeah, let's get Randall on there. Put Randall on hold and we'll talk to Representative Morgan. Representative Morgan, can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, how are you?
Hear me?
It's, yes, you are live on Capitol TV before the House Judiciary Committee, and the floor is yours.
Okay, I hope that Joe Cataldi has given you the political scene article that kind of prompted this legislation.
Yep.
If you look at it, what this bill does is just say that if you are working for somebody or for an entity that is a lobbyist in the State House, that you have to recuse yourself when a bill that benefits that entity comes on the floor. Just recuse yourself. And also that you really should recuse yourself from lobbying your fellow legislators when that legislation is being discussed. I'm happy to report that there are already a lot of our members who understand that there's a conflict of interest and they do recuse themselves. This would just formalize it. If you read the article, the Ethics Commission is, I think they're looking for guidance. Sometimes, it's not in our laws, so they don't want to rule on it. But I think we can all understand that this is a conflict of interest. And we should not be, as legislators, we should be above that. So this bill just formalizes it and says, hey, if you work for one of these concerns, that's fine. We're all citizen legislators. But if your company or the entity that you work with is a lobbyist and is seeking legislation from the General Assembly, then you should recuse yourself. You must recuse yourself.
Okay. Any questions of the sponsor? Yes, Edie.
Representative Morgan, the article mentions several employees of the city of Providence who are also legislators. And they are also legislators representing parts of the city of Providence. Your bill would require them to, or is it your intention to require Providence representatives and senators to recuse themselves on items of interest involving the city of Providence and its residents?
Well, if they require, if they require action from the General Assembly, you should. That doesn't, the only thing that I can really think of is the budget, where I don't think you would recuse yourself on the budget, because you must vote on the budget at the end of the day. But if specific bills come forward and you are an employee of Providence, especially an entity within the city of Providence, it is a conflict of interest. Doesn't mean that it won't be passed. It doesn't mean that it won't get a fair hearing from the rest of the representatives, but it is a conflict of interest. And like I said, luckily, I think there are representatives already that recuse themselves. They understand that it's a conflict of interest.
Representative Place.
Representative Morgan, would as your bill's written, would that include, say, a private pension or a public pension if you're retired, or would this be actual current employment?
It would be current employment.
Any other questions of the sponsor? Thank you, Representative Morgan. Now we'll go to Randall Rose. Randall?
Yes.
You're on the air.
Thank you. Let me just turn off the sound here. Okay, yes. I like the general idea of this bill. I think I like the general idea of the bill. I think it is important to have some recusal procedure for conflicts of interest. I would suggest a couple slight changes. The bill prohibits voting when you've gotten payments from somebody seeking action or approval. But it doesn't prohibit prohibit the case where you receive payments from someone who wants inaction or disapproval. So it seems like only one side can pay members of the General Assembly. And so I just think that should be clarified when it says seeking legislative action or approval. That should be action or approval or inaction or disapproval. And the bill also isn't clear about the time frame, how recent the payments have to be to count. I think that should be clarified as well. Maybe it should cover payments in the last payments received in the last 2 years or any payments expected to be received. So that's I think this would be worthwhile, there should also be provisions for the member of the General Assembly to return financial payments and not recuse. But I think maybe I can see a case for some exceptions. It seems like some people are suggesting exceptions for certain cases of payments, regular job compensation from your employer should be perhaps accepted in some cases because that's covered elsewhere in the Code of Ethics. But on the whole, I like the general idea of this bill. I just want to tighten up the language a bit. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions of the witness? Seeing none, that concludes testimony on House Bill 6086, which brings us to the last bill of this evening. It's my piece of legislation, 5877. No, I'm sorry, I take that back. It is 5874, and it's an act related to judgments in civil procedure. Basically what this is, I'll give you the more layman's version of it. There is such a thing called the Uniform Law Act, and there are people that meet annually and probably more frequently than that try to come up with standardized laws across the country. This is one of those standardized laws that's being recommended to the General Assembly. And this act would establish policies and procedures required for the recognition and enforcement of foreign country money judgments and registration of Canadian judgments by our Rhode Island Superior Court. And it wouldn't take effect for prospectively. It would only be from the date of passage. And it would allow this jurisdiction, if it had jurisdiction over the person who owed the money, to collect a foreign judgment on behalf of another country. If there's no, yes, Doc, go ahead.
Is this from Mr. Hemmendinger?
It is.
Who has a great reputation, I might add.
He does. He's a really smart guy.
Would this have any, this wouldn't have any financial impact on the courts, would it?
Other than getting more fees for filing of actions, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, I see no further witnesses or obviously members with questions on this bill. So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.